Hello and welcome back to All Mods 10. In today's video I want to show you how to set up all of the processes for automating this forge. This isn't going to be a normal episode. Normally I like to show you a little bit of everything, me crafting a few things and then me putting the machines together or whatever we're trying to do. But in this one I'm simply just going to show you how to set up the automation processes. So let's get straight into it. And the first process I want to set up is XP. Now, XP is fairly simple to do. It says we need a experience holder. Now, I already have one of these already. However, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to link up an ender tank going from my mob farm, going to my automatic forge, because the ender tank can transport liquids, much like an ender chest can transport items. And I'm going to get it going into a jumbo tank. This acts like a buffer, so it can hold a fair amount of XP, and we're not limited to how much the ender tank can take. And then from the jumbo tank, we'll feed it back into the forge, going into one of the fluid inputs. And that is as easy as that. That is XP sorted out. Now onto the blood. And when it comes to setting up the blood, this one was fairly easy as well. So we dug a little bit of a pit underground, and this will be a mob spawner, so we will be putting a spawner in here at some point. It's just I want to grab some upgrades for the spawner first to make sure that they don't go anywhere or start attacking me or anything like that. Once you have a pit and you're happy enough, you're going to put a mob fan down with the necessary mob fan upgrades to push them all to one side. And then to drain the blood, I'm going to be using some powered sanguinary pedestals. I don't know how to say that, but they're from Evilcraft. They're pretty easy to make as well. Just some dark powered gems. And then on top of those will be a spiked plate. And this will just simply drain the blood from the mob, slowly killing it over time. And again, once all that's hooked up, we're going to then simply straight up pipe them into a jumbo tank. And that jumbo tank will get piped into a fluid input into our forge. When it comes to the spawner, I'm going to be using a piglin brute because they have more health, we'll get more blood from them. And when it comes to upgrades on this spawner, we're simply going to be using some chorus fruit, a lot of sugar, as well as a soul lantern. Make sure all your pipes are pulling out of the powered pedestals, and then that is blood pretty much set up as well. Our third process is liquid souls. Now this is the most complicated one to set up. Now I tried to use the placer and breaker from industrial foregoing, and I placed them opposite to each other but facing the middle block. We also are going to need the advanced clicker from Just Dire Things with a drawer over the placer with a whole lot of soul sand in it, and all three of these machines actually need power. And once we had got everything all powered up, we could then place a chest with the item collector from Just Dire Things to collect all the souls and any soulless sands. However, I couldn't get the industrial foregoing machines working, so I ended up replacing those with the block placer and the block breaker from Just Dire Things. Now it's just to fine-tune the machines. When it comes to the advanced clicker, we want to make sure we put our soul extractor in there. However, beforehand, we want to make sure it has an eternal stellar on it. That way, at least then, it has no durability and becomes unbreakable. Now, we need to set this thing to hold, click, and we can set a tick duration, which we're going to be setting to about 42 seems to work. And in the advanced block breaker, what we're going to be doing is setting a bit of a filter, so when it detects that soulless sand is there, it'll break it automatically. However, I noticed the item collector from Just Dire Things wasn't picking everything up quick enough. So what I went and did was replaced it with an absorption hopper. So with that generating us souls now, the next thing we're going to need is this soul tree sapling, which can be found in end cities. And once we had grabbed that, we need to do the exact same setup with the clicker and the placer and the breaker, because we need to automatically grow this sapling. So you can see the block placer has the saplings in it. The advanced clicker is having bone meal, which is getting automatically fed through the drawer and the pipe. The block breaker will obviously break any of the logs, and the absorption hopper will simply collect it, throw it into the netherite chest, which then is filtering out the saplings to go back into the placer. And then we'll run another pipe going to a trash can, getting rid of any of the berries, sticks, anything like that that we don't really want to keep. And if you don't want to keep the soulless sand, then you can also throw that into the bin as well. So before we even test this, I'm going to make the fluid extraction that we need to make unrefined liquid souls. And the way we do that is by putting a drawdown as acting as a buffer for any logs, which will filter out from our chest of all the loot, going into a block placer. So it places the logs, and then the fluid extractors from industrial for going will then slowly over time extract from the log, getting unrefined liquid souls. We'll then pipe the fluid extractors up, going into a jumbo tank, so we always have storage for the unrefined liquid souls. And let's not forget to put an axe inside the block breaker where the sapling will be growing. And I used an Allthemodium axe with chainsaw on it, hoping that it would destroy one log to vein mine all the logs and get rid of the leaves. However, it didn't work like this. So we're going to have to replace the Allthemodium axe with a Just Dire Things axe. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the Tree Feller upgrade on the axe with the Leaf Breaker on the axe, and throwing an Eternal Stellar on the axe as well to get rid of any durability, so this thing becomes unbreakable. Put that back into the breaker, and this worked a dream. And once that was set up, you can see this full machine is now working. We're now getting unrefined liquid souls. However, that isn't it. And our final liquid that we're going to need to make liquid souls is source liquid, which again is an Ars thing. And the way we're going to get that is by throwing some snad down, growing some cactus with a fence 1 block above ground level, automatically breaking the cactus, and the agronomic source link will generate source from the cactus growing, which then will get sent to the source condenser, which takes the source from the source jars and condenses it down to a liquid. And then from pulling out of the source jar going into a jumbo tank will be the liquid source. And don't forget to put an absorption hopper to pick up any of the cactus and get rid of it through a bin. And now there's one more structure that we need to make, and that is the runic crucible, which goes as follows: a 3x3 ring of polished darkstone down, and we get a gilded, chiseled, polished darkstone in the center. Place 4 rune blocks in the diagonals of that 3x3 and fill in from rune block to rune block with upside down stairs of the polished darkstone. That is the first layer complete. The second layer consists of a 3x3 ring of stairs, making sure the corners connect. And in the middle of that ring of stairs will be an arcane block. In the middle of each of the 4 sides will be an arcane polished darkstone with arcane polished darkstone pillars on each of the 4 corners. And on top of those pillars will be more arcane crystal blocks. And then infill the space between the pillars and the arcane polished darkstone with normal polished Darkstone. And on one of the 4 sides where the upside down stairs are, do not forget to place the runic crucible, otherwise the structure will not work. And then 1 block above the arcane crystal that is surrounded by the ring of stairs, don't forget to put a quantum injector in. I almost forgot to do this. Now that that's the basic shape of the runic crucible completed, we can then start throwing some inputs and outputs in there. And the inputs would be 2 fluid inputs for our unrefined liquid souls and our source, and 1 item input for our souls. And we also need an energy hatch because this thing needs power, but it doesn't take Fe as a power source. So we're going to have to go and make a low voltage diesel generator from modern industrialization. Once you've got all your inputs, make sure you pipe everything up correctly. So your soul's going into your item input and your 2 liquids going into the liquid input, energy going straight into the energy hatch from our low voltage diesel generator, which we can use creosote to power. We are also then going to need a liquid output hatch, which is where our liquid souls will come from once it's created. And then we'll feed that straight into a jumbo tank, and that is liquid souls complete. And then we can feed this into our automatic forge, and that is liquid souls completed. When it comes to liquid aura, it's fairly simple. So we're going to need another runic crucible, which we set up for the last one. And we're also going to need source, which again, we already set up for the last one. So we can just end the tank, the source over to the runic crucible and link it up right away. We also need water, which means we can just use a sink that will supply it with infinite water. And now we need to give it some arcane dust. And the best way to set this up is through using bees. So once we've got our diamond bee, we feed it an arcane block, and that'll turn it into an arcane bee. It then flowers off arcane blocks itself. Now obviously there's some in the crucible, but I will supply it with a couple of extras. And then from the beehive, we can then throw a pipe going into the centrifuge, which will then process the honeycomb, and then we can pull out the arcane crystal from the centrifuge, throwing it into the furnace, which will then get smelted down into the dust, which then goes into the drawer and then gets fed into the crucible. That'll then all get mishmashed up. Again, we need to supply it with a source of power, so we need an energy input and the diesel generator. We can then pull from the output liquid aura and feed that into our automatic forge. That is the processes all set up. So now let's see if automatic forge will work. Now I have a recipe here for the quantum injector we made, but this isn't working. Now it might be because we haven't got power, so we're going to supply this with a little bit of power. Now I could only make the low voltage diesel generator. However, I don't think this is enough power because it still didn't work when I hooked it up. And that even with making the runic attuned arcane crystal, which allows you to upgrade the energy capacity intake. So that's as far as I can actually go. I can't make a medium voltage or a high voltage without going properly in depth into modern industrialization. So we'll have to save that for next time. That's going to do us for today's episode. If you have in fact found this useful, make sure to smash that like button, consider subscribing, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Goodbye.